Good evening and welcome once again to Fired Up. I'm your host for the show, Bob Irwin. We are coming to you live from the gun store here in beautiful Las Vegas, Nevada. This show is about guns, related political issues. There's a lot of those on this show especially, and self-defense issues. We're on KSHP 1400 Radio AM. If you're listening to us, you know that. And we appear almost simultaneously on YouTube. If you go to YouTube and click on Fired Up with Bob Irwin, you will see our show there. It stays up on YouTube forever. So if you want to go back about 4 years, you can discover all the things that I said that later were proven to be wrong. It's kind of amusing. With me tonight is one of our firearms instructors here at the gun store and gunsmith, Tony D.
Yes. Good evening.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you on. Would you give the listeners a little bit of background? It's been a while since you were on the show.
Yeah. Well, I'm a retired police officer from Rochester, New York, beautiful downtown Rochester, 111 inches of snow, 45 days of sunshine a year. Big transition from here. I was on the job for 20 years. I was in charge of the firearms training unit, and I was also second in command of the bomb squad and a member of the SWAT team. So been around the block a few times, do some CCW training here. And I'm in charge of keeping all of our rental guns up and running. So,
a constant task.
I didn't have gray hair before I started here.
That's not true.
No.
You got to be truthful with the listeners. He was old looking before I met him.
They always mistake, when we do our gun shows, they always mistake me for you. I don't know, two old guys with
glasses and white hair.
Hey, Bob, how you doing?
I know. Well, I'm not getting
younger.
I'm not getting confused with Bernie Sanders now that he's out of the limelight. Because my hair would blow in the wind and I would raise a finger to somebody, they thought I was Bernie Sanders.
You know?
Yeah. No, don't go there. Emails to us, if you have questions or comments, can be directed to Bob at Fired Up Mail. If you have a question for Tony, send it the same place and I will get it to him. We do answer every email or text that comes in. Some of them we answer on the air if a lot of people inquire about the same thing. For listeners' education, being as we're basically a training organization here at the gun store, we're the largest trainer of concealed weapon holders in the state. We always use a few shooting cases at the beginning of the show as examples of what happens to people in real life. Some are good shootings, some are bad shootings. Once in a while, there's one that's just clearly stupid. But I picked them out. There's 200 or so shootings every week in the United States or use of firearms in self-defense. And I try to pick out cases that the listeners can put themselves in the position of the shooter and see what they did right, what they did wrong, things they could have maybe changed to make it a little better. Not to be critical of the people in the situation. It's hard to think in those situations, but sometimes you think about it ahead of time, you can come up with a better solution. Or one that will work better in your circumstances. This is from KOMO TV News in Seattle on the 31st of last month. That's in Washington State, a Mount Lake Terrace Lake homeowner. Shot and critically wounded a man who was trying to get into his house through a window. The resident of the home called 911 to say he had shot a would-be intruder who was all dressed in black. The wounded man was unresponsive and lying in the street when police arrived. It was early Wednesday morning. This was one of the stories where the time wasn't given in the news reports. Pulled 3 or 4 of them, couldn't find it. The wounded man was unresponsive anyway, and the officers tried to use CPR to get a pulse. They did. He was rushed to Harborview Medical Center where he's undergoing surgery. The person who was shot was later identified as a 27-year-old local. He was known to the police, lots of police contact, but he carried no identification. He was armed with a crochet hook, of all things.
Was it a major caliber crochet hook or a minor caliber crochet?
Well, his female companion, she was 19, they discovered later. She drove away from the scene before the police arrived. So when her partner got shot, she took off. Nice. She was later found in North Seattle. Police reported the car she was in when she was captured and the one they were driving during the incident was reported stolen in upstate Washington. The getaway driver was unarmed when she was arrested. She's described in court papers as the homeowner's niece through marriage. She reportedly told detectives the pair were looking to steal firearms and other property. Now she's been booked into the Samoanish County Jail for investigation of first-degree burglary. The homeowner was not arrested. The investigation is still ongoing. So we have here a fairly common break-in, even to the point that somebody fingered this house for the hit. The guy had a fairly substantial gun collection, apparently, and this is his niece by marriage. So it's pretty clearly an inside job. The shooting is a fine shooting. The guy did it exactly right. Yeah. The point of this story is really as a warning that if you show off your valuables, that can draw people in to do you harm. I've seen many times somebody in the newspaper here with their collection of 1,000 silver dollars displayed, and he's telling the reporter how he collected all of these, this, that, and the other thing. Who do you think sees that in the paper besides all the jealous people? Criminals. They know if they break in, they get a lot of silver dollars. You really don't want to leave that stuff out. Don't put a picture of your gun collection on your Facebook page.
Remember in the olden days when they used to have gun cabinets with glass doors and all that? Now there's gun safes everywhere.
And didn't say whether this guy had one or not, so maybe the guns even weren't available to the people that came in. But don't let people know. So many times, I know you've seen this in your police experience, it turns out the guy who set up the burglary, or now the home invasion, was the carpenter's assistant who helped, fix your cabinet doors or whatever. And you can't help but show them all your good stuff. When somebody's coming over you don't know, hide all your good stuff. And don't bring a crochet hook to a gunfight. That's important. If you bring a crochet hook to a gunfight, you're going to lose. Yes. This is Charlotte, North Carolina. Mineral Springs homeowner fatally shot a teenager who believed to have broken into the man's house early Monday, according to the Union County Sheriff's Office. Investigators believe the victim, who's 17 years old, and at least one other person had broken into the Happy Hollow Lane home shortly before 3:50 a.m., 10 minutes to 4 in the morning. Officials say he might have re-entered the house to retrieve items he left behind, and the second visit awakened the homeowner. The homeowner, who the sheriff's office didn't identify, began yelling at the suspects, who broke out a window to escape from the house. The intruder then returned, apparently just a few minutes later, and possibly, they think, to retrieve a book bag he had left behind. Some backup to the story contained information that there was a bag there they were putting stuff in, and it had the guy's cell phone in it. He had left at the scene when they crashed out the window to get away from the homeowner. Anyway, the homeowner sees the guy on the back porch and fired some shots, which fatally wounded him. Then the homeowner called 911. The deceased had been found guilty of having weapons at a school last year in the same jurisdiction. Detectives are doing interviews, have not filed charges as yet, probably won't. This is a really difficult case. When he actually fired, the guy's outside.
Right, and there's no threat of imminent physical injury or death. So
from there, I'm looking at it as, if the prosecutor sees this 20-minute series of confrontations as one long event, the guy broke in, left, broke in again, got his book bag. Now the homeowner actually sees him in being in fear of his life because the guy had been inside out, fired his gun. If this is one long event, we've got an individual who's not thinking clearly, the homeowner, he's excited, he's worried, he's a fear of his life, et cetera, et cetera. And he shoots at the guy as one long event. If the prosecutor views this as 3 separate incidents, guy broke in, left,
Came back, broke in again,
left, came back, and he's now outside on the porch on the 3rd contact where the guy fires at him. Tony hit it on the head. There's no visible threat to life. He, as far as I know, he didn't claim the guy was pointing a gun at him. There's no claim actually anywhere the guy
had a gun.
Yeah. So there's.
Yeah, it'd be tough. Depends on, of course, the jurisdiction where he is. You know, in the middle of New York City, I don't think that's going to fly.
No,
but
he's going to jail in New York City or in California. This is in North Carolina, rural area. He may be okay. This is one of the examples I would use where you need to talk to an attorney before you start telling the police all the various things that happen, because you're going to be all wound up. You just shot a guy. You're at 3 a.m. You know, all this stuff is happening. You're not going to be coherent as you'd like to be. You will say things to the detectives or to the responding officers that may be out of sequence. You just need to have an attorney there before you start jabbering.
We tell them in class all the time, you know, I really like to talk to my lawyer. I really like to keep your mouth shut.
Now, let's reverse this a little bit and say the homeowner, when he first knew someone was in the house, he called 911. So I think somebody's in my house, stayed put, let the police come. If they don't get there in time and the guy has come in and becoming a threat, but call the cops first and let them do the search. They got like bulletproof vests. They got free lawyers. They got, you know, all kinds of things. And I'm not saying you, every time you hear a door creak at 3 a.m, you should call the cops. But if there's enough information, and again, on top of this, when the problem with the criminal case, maybe, how about the civil lawsuit when we have a 17-year-old, may I say it in lawyer's terms, a child was standing on the guy's porch and he shot him. Another reason why you need to speak to an attorney, because any statements you make in the criminal defense are going to be used in the civil case also. This could be a really dicey shooting, and I hope it's not for the guy. I realize he's trying to do everything right. Don't be this guy.
Yes.
Call 911 and wait until the cops come, or if the guy then breaks in and threatens you personally face to face, then you should go. Oh, this story is so
like
cool.
this one. Yeah.
This is from Seattle Times. We don't do a lot of good self-defense cases from northern Washington State. A customer is drinking coffee at a 7-Eleven store near Buren, that's a suburb of Seattle, I guess, at 5:40 a.m. March 13th, when an assailant, masked and armed with a hatchet, entered. The assailant chased the clerk back toward the cash register. The clerk saw him, masked, hatchet, and runs to where the cash register is for whatever reason. As the intruder passed a 60-year-old who was sitting there drinking his coffee, as he did most every morning, he swung the hatchet at the guy as he's passing by. Missed him. It was close, but the customer, as it happens, has a concealed carry permit in Washington State. And as the guy swung the hatchet and the assailant with the mask and all that ran by him back to where he could swing the hatchet at the clerk, our customer there, 60 years old, comes out with a .357 Magnum revolver and fires around toward the assailant, which grazed the assailant's shoulder. The assailant ignored that. He's at the counter and he's trying to whack the clerk with the hatchet. Anyway, so then the customer fired 2 more rounds. He hit the intruder in the chest and the face. That stopped the attack. This assailant guy was 43 years old. Obviously, I'm wrong with him. The incident was captured on video surveillance, and several independent witnesses provided statements to the police. It's forwarded to the King County Prosecutor's Office for review. That was back here when this happened, March 13th. This week, the prosecutors confirmed the customer used lawful force when he shot the assailant in order to stop an armed robbery and an assault. In what they called in that jurisdiction a decline memo, the senior deputy prosecutor named Brian McDonald wrote that under state law, homicide is justifiable if the slayer reasonably believes the person slain intended to commit a felony, kill another person, or inflict great personal injury. That's pretty much the law in the United States. Yeah. And there was imminent danger of such harm being accomplished. Well, duh. Yes, there was. Further, he said the slayer employed such force and means as a reasonably prudent person would use under the same conditions.
The assailant's name wasn't important, wasn't Lizzie's brother or something.
I mean,
yeah.
This is a great shoot.
And this is, hey, a good guy with a gun.
Exactly.
Right? Wayne LaPierre.
Great. Yeah. There's
CCW holder.
The guy is absolutely right in the shooting. You know, we throw the line in here somewhere: never bring a hatchet to a gunfight, like the crochet needle from before. Who robs a store with a hatchet? You know, and a mask, and you know, I mean, this is just nuts. Anyway, score is good guys 1, bad guys 0. Game over. When firing, I'm just going to point out here: when firing in defense of a third party. He was defending himself, but he was really defending the third party who was under attack when he fired the lethal shots. Make sure who's who, what's going on. Mistakes can be made because things don't always appear to be what they are. In this, you know, we normally would immediately say, or Tony would say in class, use a warning to make sure. Now, in this case, the guy's swinging a hatchet at the guy. We can tell who the good guy and the bad guy is. Right off the bat, it was quite clear to this citizen, who is an absolute hero, who the bad guy was. Usually they're not this clean cut, but God bless him, he did the right thing, and I think even in Seattle, he's not going to get in trouble.
I bet you that
over
this. Wishes he comes back. Hopes he comes back every day for coffee. And I bet you he's going to be on the house for a while.
Well, yeah, he apparently did. I mean, he was the regular. Who goes at 5:40 in the morning?
Yeah, really, he's on his way to work. You know?
Work? Oh, at 5:40 in the morning. This is Fort Ritchie, Florida, from the Tampa Bay Times. A 46-year-old suspect, along with 2 other men, broke into a woman's home on Buchanan Drive about 8:50 in the evening, according to Pasco County Sheriff's deputies. The lead guy pointed a gun at the woman's husband, told him to lie on the ground, and was bent over checking his pockets to get his wallet. While that was happening, the wife, who was not identified, she was on the ground also. They told her to get on the ground. She got up and slipped out to her room and retrieved a gun. The other 2 apparently were rifling through other things in the house at the time. She returned to the living room where the burglars were standing over her husband, and she ordered them to freeze. The men then, of course, turned and headed for the door. She repeated the order. The main suspect, the one that had been searching her husband, then turned toward her, had a gun in his hand. She fired, hitting him in the shoulder. As he tried to leave the house, he got into a fight with a woman's husband now, who came up off the ground. They fought over the suspect's gun, and 2 more rounds were fired, probably by the suspect's gun in the hands of the husband. They were sorting that out as they wrestled for the gun. The 46-year-old suspect wounded was taken to Tampa General Hospital with injuries not considered life-threatening. The firearm he had was reported stolen, of course. He's being charged with home invasion robbery with a deadly weapon. Detectives are still looking for the other 2 who left the scene. So the first bad guy gets shot. What do his friends do? Run. Yeah. No honor among thieves. That's a good thing for us on our side. So the invader's distracted while searching the husband. The wife gets a gun, arms herself, returns to the living room, and warns the home invaders. When one turns toward her, she fires, wounding him, eventually causing his capture. The warning at that point, I don't really think was appropriate. I would have just told, where I'd been her, I'd have just fired my gun. The warning was to freeze. It's telling them they're captured. He's
Now
over
what are you
her
gonna do
husband.
with him?
He's armed. He's already hit her husband upside the head with his gun. Are they going to decide to just surrender when there's three of them and one of her and the husband's down on the ground? The 3 against 1, I don't know whether that was a good idea or not. I think had the woman just started firing, she'd have been well within her parameters to do that.
Absolutely.
Florida has a stand your ground law. If somebody's in your house with a firearm, they've knocked your husband to the ground.
They're not collected for the right purpose.
Fire your gun. The freeze thing is what bothered me a little bit because it's trying to capture them.
No, I mean, and again, what are you going to
just
do
yelling,
after
get
that?
out of the house.
Yeah, that would be better.
You remember Sun Tzu, who said, always leave your enemy an escape route in order to defeat him without injuries to your side? That's not an exact quote, but his was in Chinese. Y'all know the books. Giving your opponent the ability to flee using a warning, get out of my house or I'll shoot you, is better than stay here, I'm arresting you. And that's what freeze kind of means. Freeze means it's cold. Not a good command. Stop, get out of my house. Something less colloquial. But she did a great job. I'm not trying to say anything wrong with what she did. I approve of what she did. Saved her husband's life, no doubt. Thinking it through, a warning that said get out of my house would probably have been a better option in this one. We've had a interesting thing this week. We're done with the defense stories. I've got a lot of them stacked up for next week that I could be using here, but we've run into an interesting thing, which is going to become a huge issue here shortly in Nevada and in all Western states, actually. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has ruled in a case that came up to them that people who use marijuana, specifically anyone with a medical marijuana card, is self-admitting that they are a habitual user of what the feds consider an unlawful Schedule I drug. The NIH, National Institute of Health, and so forth, came up with a statement that there is no medicinal use of marijuana. It is not an approved drug. It is a Schedule I narcotic. Probably that's medically correct. I don't know. I've run into, in my little bit of law enforcement, and Tony, I'm sure in a lot of your law enforcement, have you ever been attacked by somebody high on marijuana?
No.
They're the friendliest group of people you're ever going to meet.
Wrestle a Twinkie away from you, maybe, but that's about it.
There isn't a direct relationship, if you talk to most people in law enforcement, between people who smoke pot and people who attack cops and do violent acts. They are concerned that it's a gateway drug and it causes people to start doing other things, which we're not even going to get into. The issue here is they sent out letters to all us dealers some time ago about this, that if someone has a medical marijuana card, and in Nevada, we actually had, I think, twice, when you go to buy a gun, you have a government issued ID. They used their medical marijuana card as a government issued ID. And the ATF says they're showing you a card that says they are in fact a habitual user of an illegal drug. Now, we're regulated by the feds. So they determine who we're allowed to sell guns to with their rules. And they've decided that if you have a medical marijuana card, you fall into that category. Now, this was a 3-judge panel of the Ninth Circuit. It's being appealed several ways for a Ninth Circuit rehear, for a motion up to the Supreme Court, for reconsideration by the same 3-judge panel, as if that would change anything. My opinion, this case is not going to the U.S. Supreme Court, and the reason is that it's not a clean case. This isn't a person who uses medical marijuana by prescription and is trying to buy a gun. The woman involved in the case is a veteran who has some severe injuries and long-term problems, but she doesn't use marijuana at all. She got the medical marijuana card to support other people who have medical marijuana cards. When medical marijuana first came out here, she's one of the group that got a card just to show that people want them. Although she is a disabled veteran, she doesn't have a prescription for medical marijuana. She only has the card. So when she checked on the form that she's not a habitual user of marijuana, she was telling the truth. But she's got a medical marijuana card, which the Ninth Circuit says
Disqualified.
if you've got the card, you only have the card because you use marijuana. Why else would you get the card? I don't know. People get driver's license for ID when they don't drive. We get people who do that all the time. Too old to drive and they still have their license. But that's not really the same thing. But the point is, it's not going to be an appealable case because she's such a unique individual for the reason she had the card. And there are other cases that are more clear, where people were using marijuana, they got the card for it, and now the federal government is saying they can't buy another firearm. The court, when you read the actual decision, which is like 40 pages of legal crap, I almost fell asleep, but I read the whole thing. They said in there, and here's the problem, they are not addressing whether marijuana should be legal or not. That wasn't their issue.
Yeah.
They were very narrowly asked if a person with a medical marijuana card, thereby a presumed user of marijuana, can purchase a gun. And they agreed with the lower court, no, they can't. Because the feds say it's a hallucination drug and so on and so on, Schedule 1. So they said she can't buy a gun, but they specifically also said in their ruling, they're not ruling on whether marijuana should be legal or not, and they're not ruling on whether guns already owned by individuals that later got a medical marijuana card are illegal. Okay. They weren't asked that question. So now we have Party A, me. I went and got a medical marijuana card. I'm doing it for PTSD, common. And I go to buy a gun and they say, I can't have one. Tony
I already have one.
already has a gun. Now he goes to get some medical marijuana card. He's allowed to keep his. So we have, what the court has done is create a law that is clearly unbalanced. It's telling one group of people it's okay to smoke marijuana. Well, they weren't asked if it's okay to smoke marijuana. They're telling one group of people it's okay to have a gun when you have a medical marijuana card because you bought it last week. And I bought mine this week, therefore I can't have a gun. One of the big deals in the United States Constitution and laws is equal protection under the law. We run into that every 5 minutes on every issue. You know, we have to treat everybody the same, unless they're Hillary Clinton in her emails, but that's another story. So it's a good thing this case isn't going to be appealed. They need a cleaner one there to take to the Supreme Court. Now we're talking probably a year down the line, even if they rush this thing through because it's such an important case. So many states have legalized marijuana or medical marijuana, and this is all going
Now, what's going to happen
to
in Nevada after this election, where they vote on the recreational use of marijuana? Where does all this come into that?
Interesting. A couple of the, I mean, I got like 9 pages on this thing, and a couple of the states, attorney generals are weighing in on the federal issue because their state has recreational marijuana. Colorado being the big one, but Hawaii, which is, you know, I love Hawaii. I worked there for a long time. Everybody smokes pot, probably from the governor on down. And I don't know who the governor is right now, but you know, it is not a place that is where it's not hard to live if you like marijuana.
Right.
The states that already have it, now do they go through and get a list of people that buy marijuana legally? And you got to imagine the difficulty. You go into a store right now with your medical marijuana card and you buy marijuana in Nevada, and you can't go buy a gun, but you can buy marijuana. But if you're an out-of-state resident, you don't have the marijuana card. Now, in some of these places, you can buy marijuana on your out-of-state medical marijuana card, where a resident can't because they don't have medical marijuana cards. That's one of the issues in Colorado.
Okay.
This doesn't really relate to a gun problem. As we both said earlier, the people who smoke marijuana are not a crime problem, other than the manufactured crime of smoking marijuana, which is illegal. But they're not a danger to society. Now, Colorado may be showing us that they are a danger in traffic accidents and things. There are studies being done on that, but they really haven't had enough time to get a really good reading on that. Certainly alcohol is a problem with drivers, but we don't have, well, we do in some places have alcohol cards. You have to get a permit. Weren't they that way in New York for a while? But they only have state alcohol stores?
Well, there's no, and like in New York, you can't buy liquor at a grocery store or wine at a grocery store. You have to go to a liquor store. But when I went to EOD school down in Huntsville, Alabama, then it's different. There were dry counties down there. You had to buy it from a government store, so it was really weird. But what I'm thinking about this, though, I mean, okay, if say you're stopped and you have recreational marijuana and you have a firearm, now are you going to be charged under the prohibited person in possession of a firearm because you're in possession of marijuana?
Well,
so I mean,
the Ninth Circuit panel was specific in saying they're only talking about people with medical marijuana cards, because they were smart enough not to step into the recreational marijuana and what if you owned the gun before. They specifically excluded that, and specifically excluded several times that they're not saying whether marijuana should or should not be a Schedule I drug. And some of the media, the left media wants marijuana legalized, have used this and said the Ninth Circuit says marijuana is legal. They didn't say that. They said the combination of buying buying a firearm that's new to you and having marijuana on a medical issued card denies you.
Yeah. And then during CCW class, we also, at the beginning of the CCW class, I read all the prohibited things, DUI within the last 5 years, violent crime, and now, of course, I put medical marijuana card. I think they're going to, they'll deny you a CCW on that aspect also. So,
well, yeah, you can't have a gun under federal law.
Right.
How can you have a
CCW?
CCW, right?
So it's just another,
There again is another issue that this brings up. So if you can't buy a gun and you have a CCW, but you're prohibited by federal law from buying a gun, you are a prohibited person if you have a medical marijuana card. If you're a prohibited person, how can you have a CCW permit? If you're a prohibited person, how can you have a gun in your house? In California, where they are wrestling with this, and they are already, because they kind of use that state as an example of where we're going here, or maybe going here, with every gun has to be registered in California. You know, rifle, pistol, whatever. So when they go to limit what they call assault rifles or magazines that hold more than 10 shots, whatever, they have a list of who owns all those guns. And at the current time, they are comparing the lists of people who have warrants for their arrest for something with the firearms owners list. Right now, they're only comparing the list of criminals and gun owners. And when they find the correlation, what they're doing is they're sending them a letter that says, you show that you're on both these lists and you are required to come to a law enforcement agency and turn your guns in, or explain to us why we show that you're a criminal, you're a fugitive from justice or something, you know. And mostly the bad guys, the little bad guys, are complying with that. They're going to have a new one here shortly. They've just added, I'm reading is they've added 60 agents now to these task force. They have one in Northern California, one in Southern California, that look for the criminal history versus the gun ownership. They're going to add marijuana to that. And these two other groups are in training now and expect to be in the field at the end of the year. So the marijuana buyers will then get a knock at the door, get a letter. And herein lies the other problem with that. If you're going to somebody's house and they are a criminal or using an illegal Schedule I drug, how do we send, we send a patrol guy over and say, hi, I'm here to arrest you? No, we have a federal crime. We have a firearm in the house. Who goes? The SWAT team goes. So
it could get messy.
Yeah. And then, if it's the wrong house, the guy moved, the address is no good, the information's out of date. They don't know that because the guy didn't respond to the letter. If you get one of those letters, respond to it. Because the next thing, don't just tear it up and go, he doesn't live here anymore. Because when he doesn't respond, call the cops and tell them you got this letter and the guy doesn't live there anymore. So otherwise, in 30 days or 40 days, you're going to have a knock at the door at 4 a.m. that's going to sound a lot like a battering ram when you don't answer the door right away. And it's the cops, or it's a home invasion. Take your pick. The ones that say police on the middle of their shirt here, don't shoot them. This is an incredible can of worms that the Ninth Circuit has done. And I would very much actually appreciate this Bob at Fired Up Mail address, that if you have a strong feeling about this, that I'd like to kind of collect some of that data and see. You don't really have to tell me in email whether you use medical marijuana or not. You can say, like the guys that have illegal machine guns. I know a guy at work who has an illegal gun, and you can start it that way. That's fine. But I'm really wondering how people are going to react to this, and I wonder how law enforcement in Nevada is going to react to this. It's real can of worms, and it's really just open right now, and nobody knows what's going to happen.
It's going to get more interesting after the election with the here in Nevada and the question one and the question two.
Yeah, well, we've got a ballot question here, as some of you are aware. Question one requires background checks for all firearms transactions. Right now, they're required from dealers only. And they're trying to close what they claim is the gun show loophole, all these criminals going to gun shows and buying firearms, which is hokum. If you don't believe that, next time you go to a gun show, buy a firearm from a private party and try and get out of the show with it. You're going to get a background check. None of the gun shows let you out unless you have a receipt and you have a background check receipt, or you show that you're a dealer or some, your CCW, or some reason why you don't need a background check. Anyway, that's not true. And the problem with question one is it requires, I'm going to say everybody, it really doesn't. It requires most people to get a background check. And it doesn't exempt people that should be exempted.
And it's unenforceable.
Yeah.
It's unenforceable. If I sell you a gun, right, who's to know that I sell you a gun?
Well,
unless you get your gun stolen or get held up, then they're going to do a trace and they're going to come back to me if I bought it.
And you're going to say I sold it to Bob.
And then you committed a crime.
But, well, yeah, you don't dare tell them that because you sold a gun without a background check.
Right.
So you're in trouble too. And what we saved between us was the $25 state fee.
So in order, it's unenforceable unless the guns are all registered to begin with. Then there's a trail.
Yeah. So what it creates is what I like to call Hillary's list. When she becomes president, she will know who owns all the AR-15s and stuff because they're all recorded transactions. Even the NRA has come out and said, they're not flat against background checks. They like background checks.
Yeah.
I like background checks too. They are against keeping a list of who owns the guns. That's the result of the background checks, and that's the problem. And if you think that the FBI, when we run the background checks on sales here, or the state, when we run the background checks on people through the state and then it goes to the FBI, you believe that they erase those computers at the end of the day? They say they do.
Yes, they do.
However, can you erase a computer? Ask Hillary. That information can be pulled up by anybody. You can't erase your computer unless you smash the hard drive or you smash your, what you have, a BlackBerry, with a hammer.
BlackBerry, yeah.
And even then they can put the pieces back together if they can find enough pieces.
Hammer time.
You can't, they're creating a list without even, if they're not even intending to, they are still creating one. And then when the next administration comes in and says, guess what, we want this, we don't like magazines that hold more than 10 shots. California's done that. Go back around California January 1st and see what happens.
Yeah.
Any magazine that holds more than 10 shots is now, on January 1 or January 2, because January 1's a holiday, is going to be unlawful in California. Troll out. Remember all those grandfather magazines you had? Not grandfather anymore. Governor signed that because that'll make us all safe if the bad guys only have 10. Well, wait a minute. The bad guys are bad guys already, right? They're already going to have big magazines. Right. So the victims will have, well, it'll be less bloodshed because the victims get killed quicker and there won't be as many dead bodies. So if there's less dead bodies, that means crime's gone down. And
all this makes my head hurt.
This is all smoke and mirrors. Question one that wants to do background checks on all transactions is a flawed piece of legislation, will create more problems than it solves. And one of the things you'll find interesting, I certainly did, they said it will reduce domestic violence, and domestic murders. And yet, the bill exempts people in domestic relationships from having to do the background check.
Exactly.
So if the husband wants to give his wife a gun or his girlfriend a gun or each one of them a gun, those are exempt if they're all living in the same household. So the very people that we're saying it's going to protect them are the ones that are exempt from the bill. You're being sold a gigantic bill of goods, folks. Vote no on one. The yes on one guys believe it will reduce crime. I don't think they even believe that.
Yeah.
I think it's just a revenue raiser for the state. If you have your choice, you vote with your wallet. You buy a gun from me, it costs the gun plus $25 for the state of Nevada, plus a whole lot of paperwork, plus 8.15% in sales tax. If you buy it from a private party in the parking lot, you save the $25, all the paperwork, and 8.1%. That's why people don't get background checks, because we charge for it. If we quit charging for it and they erase the list, I'm all for it. No dealer wants to sell a gun to a criminal. We'd like to know, so we don't get ourselves in trouble. We're getting toward the end. I want to mention the passing of an old friend of mine, Bill Eichner. Those of you with Metro a long time, I don't know if you realize that Bill passed away in North Carolina. He was a member of the old red team, the SWAT team here when Steve Franks and all that group were on it. They were just hysterical SWAT team and effective. Gary Beckwith, who's, et cetera. There's a whole bunch of them. Anyway, Bill was on that team. He was the deputy up on Mount Charleston for years and years and years. Those of you who are familiar with him from living on Mount Charleston. Great guy, 70 years old. Sorry
Pretty young.
Sorry to see him pass away, a friend. Getting to the point where we all go to more friends' funerals than we do to weddings anymore. Next weekend, September 10 and 11, this weekend, actually Saturday and Sunday, is the Western Trails Gun and Knife Show at Santa Fe on Rancho. The gun store does not generally participate in that show. However, I will be at the NRA table around 11 a.m. for an hour or so. If you have a question or comment you want to talk about, I will be at the front of the show at the NRA table for a while. Questions, comments, questions you want to ask, you don't want to put in an email.
Because you can't erase a computer.
Yeah, because you can't erase a computer. And if NASA's watching anybody's phone, this is probably it. A couple weeks later, we have the Rocky Mountain Show at Cashman. I'm sorry, the Crossroads of the West show, right?
Oh.
It's backwards on me.
Yeah, Crossroads, yeah.
It's Crossroads.
Yeah.
I meant to change that. I had these two backwards on one outline, and it's been backwards ever since. Crossroads, the big gun show at Cashman Field. I still have a fair number of these passes. If this will save you $15, I guess, getting in the show. If you're a regular listener, please send me an email to that address asking for a ticket for the show. I really don't have enough to give you 2 or 3 or 4 to bring your family. I apologize. If you ask me for 2, you're going to get 1. But, it'd still save you $15, which you can spend at somebody's table buying something nice for yourself. So that is October 29 and 30. Send me an email. We'll get you a pass. Next week, we have coming up next week, I don't think I put it in here, but I believe it's Lenny Davis coming in next week to talk about guns and things. And we'll get some more on the medical marijuana from him. He worked for the DEA for a number of his federal years. And we'll probably have more information about where the Ninth Circuit's going by next week, whether they entertain an appeal or not on this. Question 1 will be for later. So we got those 2 gun shows coming up. Be sure and like us on Facebook if you would be so kind to the show. Go to Facebook and like Fired Up with Bob Irwin. Comments and questions to the bob@firedupmail.com. And a reminder, I didn't put it in here at all. We do the concealed weapon class for everybody, basically for free, every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday. Starts at 9 in the morning. You can sign up on our website, thegunstorelasvegas.com. We are the largest trainer of concealed weapon holders in the state by far. So it's a good class. We absorb most of the cost because of our belief in the right to keep and bear arms. The Sheriff's Department charges $97 to get the permit. I don't personally believe that the government should charge you for the ability to carry a firearm. You have a right to keep and bear arms under federal and state constitutions. So that's kind of my personal vendetta against charging people to carry a gun. How can they charge you to carry a gun? That is, talk about unconstitutional.
Yeah. The class has been very popular. We've been quite crowded, so we recommend you come to sign up online. You can sign up online or call the store, and we can get you signed up in a class. And also, we recommend that you come in either prior to the class and qualify. You can shoot before, and this way here you're not shooting at the end of a 9-hour day with the herd of people in there. You can do it one-on-one, and you can then, in renewal guys, we recommend that highly, because this way you can shoot on one day, take the class, be out about 1:30, run right down to Metro, turn in your paperwork, and get everything done with one day. So that would be, it's a lot easier and a lot less stressful.
Yeah, and if you are a renewal, they're taking about the whole time, about 100 days plus.
Yeah, it's 100. They say 120 days. I got my renewal on the 121st day, because 120th
The
day
violation of state law.
was, well, it was a Sunday, but there's no mail. So I got it on the next day.
Yeah,
But,
so you want to come in 4 months
yes,
early?
absolutely. Get in before that, so you don't overlap, because they're not grandfathering anybody in. And if you don't get the new permit in the mail, you're ineligible to carry until it comes.
Until your new one shows up.
Right.
And they do the license in California now and mail them back and so forth. So it takes a bit if you need to get a new license, etc. So not earlier than 4 months ahead.
No,
Because then they'll issue you the same permit. They'll give you a new one with a new picture, and it'll expire at the same time.
Right. So you actually lose time on your permits.
Got to be inside that window. Hopefully they're going to fix that. We'll see. There's a lot of stuff going on. Crime rate's up. If you have a gun, carry it. You may need it, or you might be the guy drinking coffee at 5 in the morning when someone else is being attacked with a hatchet. Someone else might need your firearm. Don't be the guy who doesn't carry it here or there because they don't expect to be attacked. You never expect to be attacked. If you do expect to be attacked, don't go there.
2 magazine neighborhoods. When you eat dinner at those 2 magazine neighborhoods.
I remember doing that when I was younger, carrying an extra speed loader for my revolver because I was going someplace dangerous. Well, that's really stupid. Why? I want to be able to change magazines. I will be back next week with Lenny Davis. I appreciate you all tuning in to the show. This show is really fun to do. There's just so much stuff going on with this election that is just, if you're not a voter, I'm almost to the point of doing that. You cannot come in here to the building unless you show me your voter
registration card.
And if you don't vote, it's your fault. You gotta vote. If you're not registered, get registered so you can vote in the election in November.
Join the NRA.
Join the NRA.
Join the NRA.
If you don't like the free magazine, send them money anyway.
Yeah.
There's a number of good organizations you can support. Nevada Firearms Coalition is one of my favorites. I was just talking to Don this afternoon, actually. They're trying to do a great thing on this question 1 to get it defeated. It has so many side effects that are going to just wreck your life if you want to go. Thanks for listening. We're gone for now. Have a good week. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you.